So we are gonna improvise a talk about the guard, the stance in MMA. And this is going to be improvised and it will be put on YouTube as it comes. So, MMA changed a lot as a sport in the whole in the last years, and we remember when people was training Muay Thai, then Jiu-Jitsu with the gi, and wrestling, and then somehow they were trying to blend everything together, and that was Valetudo MMA. Now the sport with the rules and everything start by now it's
a sport of its own.
It's a sport of its own that of course relies on the specialist of every area, but still it's a sport of its own.
Created own patterns.
Yeah, and the main point here is that you cannot, for example, use a pure boxing stance and expect that stance to work as well against wrestling takedown.
But Francesco, why not?
Yeah, or a Muay Thai stance, right? With the hip up and the hip leading the movement in front, right? And you cannot expect to use that stance against takedown, against wrestling takedowns, and you cannot expect to have a pure wrestling stance against a guy who's striking and does other things. So you need to adapt what comes from different areas and to blend it. And the first place of the sport where all the different arts needs to be blended together is the basic stance, right? The guard. Now, I don't believe right now that I don't believe that we already have one guard that you can take it and say, okay, this is the MMA stance, and this is from where you have to start, and from here you are ready to strike and you're ready to wrestle and you're ready to do everything. I don't think there's such a thing, but there are a different set of strategies that you can play and adapt to the game in a way that a guy with a more striking background or a guy with a more wrestling background can still use their strength, adapting them to MMA in a way that makes sense. So the way, for example, we approach this part of the game is based on jab and single leg, because I believe that jab and single legs are what set the distance on this. Yeah, from here is jab and single legs are what set the distance both for the striking and for the wrestling. Now, how do you have to adapt these things into the MMA game in a way that you can flow in between striking and wrestling? First thing has to be the hip. You cannot have the hip too high, you cannot have the hip too low. Yeah? So I will explain to have a stance where your heel and the leg and the hip and your torso are almost on the same diagonal line. Okay? In this way, I'm gonna post on Dennis just for just as a base so that you can see better the move. So this way, it's decently easy to take away the leg in case there is a single. Yeah, I still have my reach with the jab. And I still have penetration if I step for a single. Okay? Yeah, normally you can go knee on the mat, but also you just go like this. Yeah? So, different strategies for playing this kind of game, for blending jab and single leg together. One way would be, for example, the McGregor way, let's say. Okay? So, and no, don't switch stance. And I particularly like these strategies for southpaws. As a southpaw, you would have, as a southpaw with a more striking based background, you would have a wider stance and you would have a very extended jab hand. And with this jab hand, you will check what's happening here. You can check, there is a beautiful video from Jack Slack that explains these things. So, as a striking guy, I would have my jab hand here, and the jab hand will check what's happening here. Now what happens? if I feel something, and this is really touch base, if I feel something is there and it's fine, okay? If I'm protected behind my long post, and if he comes at me, the jab hand will give me the distance. But what happens that if he shoots for my legs, as soon as the checking hand, the antenna, doesn't feel anything, I need to be trained to drop it and connect it, to drop it vertically. Yeah, not around, but really vertically, showing the palm and connecting the elbow to the hip. So that the exercise will be like this. As soon as I don't feel anything, boom, I drop the hand because most probably something is coming to my hip, right? Of course, you need to be careful here because there's a striking involved, right? But let's say we have a guy with a striking background, we need to adapt his striking background to the MMA, we need to blend jab and single legs together, so we will start from here. Let's say orthodox stance, I will still have an antenna, yeah, my jab hand will be an antenna, okay? And the moment I don't feel anything, I will drill this very basic reaction where my jab, yeah, drop to intercept the shoot. So of course, if I fix the hip a bit more backwards, rather than keep it here, this is going to be easier because the hip will already be in that position. At the same time, if I have a post here and he shoots, then sometimes this happens. And from here, I'm just going to punch where there is the contact. And this could be an easy way to adapt strategically a striking background into MMA, being ready to defend the single leg, but also to shoot for the single leg. Because, for example, if we decide to go for the single leg from here, of course the first thing would be to force the guy to put his hands up with my jab again, and from here I should be able to drop and connect my shoulder here. There, with the head outside of his body. We wouldn't go this way, yeah? Because wrestling wise, if the orthodox stance now will be with the right leg in front. No, you have to adapt these things. So you need to shoot with the left leg in front, the same leg that makes your striking stance orthodox. So from here, if now I shoot like this, I'm going to impact on any counter strike that is thrown my way. It can be the knee, can be an uppercut, can also simply be the fact that if I attach here, now he's already pushing from here, defending there. It's not very easy. Yeah? But if I'm here and I immediately break his balance in that direction, it's going to work better MMA wise. So again, striking background, yeah, we need to adapt the game for MMA. So we will use the jab as an antenna, we will extend the jab more than what we will do in a regular striking match, yeah, so that you get used when something is happening here to drop the antenna vertically so that it becomes a crossface, yeah, and you start to sprawl. Another strategy to blend jab and wrestling, but now let's say the guy has a wrestling background, so he's more used to a very low stance and to keep the hip behind, yeah, protected from all the shoots. You cannot box like this. So what could you do? Watch Robert Whittaker in his last match versus Jared Cannonier. You can risk a bit the head, you can risk a bit with the position of the head, keeping it in front, if you manage against the distance. And now what you do different is that your antenna, instead of being the hand of the jabbing hand, is the cross hand. So I will keep this end as antenna, the head barely alive, Because you need to be ready to get out of the way. In MMA, you cannot rely too much on covering behind because the clothes are small. So your head must be very, very mobile. So yes, again, now the cross hand now will be the checking hand, the antenna, and this hand will be lower. Now what happens? That if this guy tries to shoot, has to shoot a very long way to come to me, and he will already find a crossface ready for him. And at the same time, yeah, I have, as a wrestler, yeah, as a guy with a wrestling background, I have a weird angle to shoot my jab. And I'm going to use like this idea of having one checking hand, yeah, that if doesn't feel anything, I'm going immediately to defend the takedown that most probably is coming at me. If it feels something, it can be a post, and I'm going to punch always just where I feel that there is a contact. So I don't need to think too much. If something is here, I can punch there. If switching is whatever to shoot, yeah. Sometimes they follow with post and I can punch where I have the follow. If I feel nothing at all, boom, I'm directly going to impact because I know that I have a takedown to defend. And this way, I can use both hands as antenna, the other hand to punch. The antenna will be ready to drop and become a crossface. And with tiny strategical adaptations, we can move from striking to MMA, from wrestling to MMA, blending the game together.
Sounds good.
We did it. First take, go YouTube.